A little over 2 years ago, that video about 10 longest RPGs I have beaten around those years was released. And one of the promises was to have a second part after 2 years. So, this list is just considering the number of hours I had to play until watching the credits of the game. Needless to say that depending what you do, it can take longer in some cases. Whatever the case, part 3 is coming in another 2 years? I don't know, looking back it was presumptuous of me to say that this video will come out. I'll cross fingers, I guess. In the 10th place, we have the whole Xenoblade series. Yep, unironically all of them took around 70 hours to finish, and what an absolute ride. For better or worse, I got to play these games recently, and something I am glad about was going through the whole saga without many years in between, as the story is quite messy, having little details all over the place, since we get to know Shulk until pretty much closing with Noah. Maybe the story I didn't enjoy that much was the second entry, but just in some moments. However, once you get near the end, it takes inertia in a beautiful way. Actually, thinking about it, this is the entry that had some hiccups here and there, with also gacha mechanics. But aside from that, I definitely recommend to play all of them. Same goes for Xenoblade X. Some say it has a weak story, but I disagree. At least to me, it was quite interesting. Maybe the hardest thing to get into these games is that they are kinda action, kinda turn-based RPGs, where Edge and the first entry were the hardest ones, because you need to have something more or less decent while fighting bosses, otherwise good luck, cause at least with Shulk, if you do not consider the future side plus different outcomes, losing party members is easy as heck. As for Edge, the last part can be a piece of work if you do not have a good build. Heck, there were moments in the story where I was the only one alive, slowly chewing through the boss's HP. And yeah, for the rest of the game, if you don't take serious builds and farm into consideration, good luck taking down some enemies, let alone bosses. Same goes for the second and third entry. In the 9th place, Tales of Arise, with little over 70 hours. Another story that was disliked once you reach almost the end. I don't know, either I am not that harsh with games, or who knows, cause it was good to me. It had an intriguing beginning where we follow a character named Iron Mask, character that was able to use a fire sword because he had no pain. And slowly but surely, he starts to fight for his people, beginning with one of the 5 Renan Lords. After this, his adventure gets messier and messier, as they get to understand what is the real state of the world, which isn't as little as they initially thought. The main reason why I love this story so much is because reading between lines, this game describes really well the kind of life we have as humans. The, let's say, first part is easy to get, later is where it gets a bit complicated. Its gameplay follows a classic formula with the Tales games. Once you enter in contact with an enemy, into a small area you go. What's cool is that each character plays in a different way. Or you can be a moron like me, spamming a single attack. Both routes work. In general, it is a well-balanced game, even in hard difficulties. The endgame is the one that requires patience and grinding, but at least for the main story and multiple side quests along the way, there is no need to do something special. Tales of Arise is also definitely recommended. In the 8th place we have Wizard Symphony, also with little over 70 hours. However, this is considering that you do almost everything. At least I finished all characters' quests and stuff like that. There were a couple of missed enemies, but meh. And what can I say? The main problem here is the language. In any case, here we follow a group of adventurers who work helping people in the city of Kazan. I know it is cliché as heck, but guess what happens down the line? You begin this journey searching for a cat inside a dungeon. Later you find a girl trapped in some sort of device, and from here it starts to get messier, as she contains data about an ancient civilization that vanished long ago. Now, it would be cool if we could receive an English localization, cause this game is hilarious as heck. There are many situations where you have me laughing like a madman. Not your usual hehe. When I mean laugh, it is like that dude that sounds like your engine won't start. Yep, something like that. There's particularly 2 characters that have really entertaining situations, Sylvia and Nina. From time to time I still remember a chapter about mushrooms and the magnificent work the voice actors did. For those interested, it is fully voice acted, so there is no need to read that much, aside from of course side quests and some puzzles. This is a first-person dungeon crawler, and the main reason why I liked it is because since early in the game you can get lost if you do not do some basic mapping. These are some of the images I did while advancing, and I have to be honest, from time to time doing something like this is quite entertaining, as well as the whole bunch of puzzles the game throws at you. It is worth mentioning that it doesn't have your usual RPG mechanics, having to farm some materials to upgrade your equipment. The same goes for secondary skills. Needless to explain what happens in some boss fights if you do not prepare decent skills and level up your characters and equipment. In the 7th place we have Trails Through Daybreak 2, with 75 hours. This is considering every single quest beginning to end and unlocking almost everything. And what can I say? Yet another game I heard it's considered as decent. Or at least some people didn't like how things evolved with the time jumps and stuff like that. I wouldn't place it in a pedestal, but it was a good story for me. However, I won't deny that things could have been balanced in a better way. Same goes for its gameplay. Some things improved as the customization and other details while in combat, but some others took a step backwards. In any case, I believe it is worth playing it. Nonetheless, it is hard to say that you can skip the previous entry because there you will understand how things led to this point. And yeah, you also have to go through trails in the sky and well, when a series grows this much, sometimes it's disheartening looking at it from outside. But it is a good time to begin with the Sky series and decide from there. In the 6th place, Tokyo Xanadu X Plus, with 80 hours. This is also considering you do almost everything. Yep, there are multiple little details that can pass under the water, so it is kinda complicated if you try to do absolutely everything. In any case, here we follow Tokisaka Ko, a student who tried to help Asuka, a girl from his school. At first it looked like a couple of mobs were after her, but moments later something like a rift opens. Inside this place demon-like creatures appear, but for his surprise, Asuka summoned a sword and the rest is a story. Down the line, and once again Ko gets inside of another rift, and he gets the powers to beat these creatures too. Tokyo Xanadu was a decent game for the most part, but yeah, there are some moments where they go through loads and loads of dialogue. At the end, I kinda guessed where everything was going, but the end took me by surprise. In general, the gameplay and music are the things I love the most here. Every character plays in a different way, some being really agile, while others are kinda slow but hit like a truck. However, where it gets messy is with boss fights. There are some enemies that can destroy you in a couple of moves, however that is just if you play in higher difficulties. But if you have experience with easy games, I will say it is worth playing it in harder difficulties, otherwise it may feel like a bottom masher in some moments. That's just my opinion. In the 5th spot, God Eater 2, with 80 hours. It is worth mentioning that there's an ton of quests to do, so maybe after 200 hours you completed almost everything? In any case, a couple of weeks ago I talked about this game, so I won't ramble so much. Things take place after the events from the first game. The MC is part of a new generation that is able to use guns and melee weapons. The state of affairs is, the world is pretty much effed up, and the Blood unit needs to save the day, until things start to go out of hand, and well, everything else is a story. I have polarizing thoughts about this game, cause its story is superb, but its gameplay reminds me to old Monster Hunters, and yeah, nostalgia didn't age that well for me, so it is passable. The deal is that due to the nature and design of the game, you will end up fighting the same mobs for a while, until you get thrown into terrible areas where you need to fight multiple Aragami in one sit. Yeah, there are multiple parts where things get quite complicated, but I love those moments, as I have to strategize a bit more, at least in comparison to the average fight. In the 4th place we find Unicorn Overlord, with a little over 80 hours. This is considering that you go through every single fight there is to have, Coliseum, past, future, etc, everything. Now this is a really good tactical RPG. I know it looks like a $1 store game, wise words from that video all those months back, but the only thing that lost me was the story. Sure, at first it is intriguing, as Elaine has to leave the kingdom, while most lords ended up deserting and joining forces with Valmore. After several years, his objective is to get Cornia back, but in the process his childhood friend gets kidnapped, and for better or worse you can lose the thread of what happened here, cause depending what you do, the story won't advance for a while, but after some events it definitely gets better and better. Its wacky gameplay is what I love the most, as you move your units over the board, sometimes using skills, changing directions, retreating allies and bringing others to the fight. At first, it is kinda basic, as you won't manage that many units, but later you will be throwing some mambo jumbo while guessing what happened that helped you in some battles, plus all the gimmicks you need to consider while moving your units. So yeah, even if you aren't that much into tactical games, it is worth playing it. In the third place we have Trails Through Daybreak, with 100 hours. Yeah, where everything began in this arc. The 100 hours are considering you did every quest and all that jazz. In general, I enjoy this game more. I mean, both have good graphics and amazing OSTs, but in terms of story and game progression, this one is much more balanced, until you notice that there is but one artifact left. Okay, so the deal is that Agnes wants help to search for some devices. While at first Van was against the idea, once he understands what is going on, he takes the job seriously, and in the process, several characters join the cause. What's entertaining about this particular release is that you end up traversing multiple areas, at least in comparison with the second entry where it gets a bit stagnant, as you visit almost the same places from this entry. Yep, it is ironic, I know. In the second place we have Metaphor, with 120 hours. Once again, this is considering that you do almost everything, or at least I tried. But yeah, it was kinda hard considering that I didn't use guides, so the whole deal of planning activities and routes takes a while. Here the story is simply amazing, where we follow an Elden boy who gets involved in one of those cartoonish races where everyone wants to win, because that way they can get the right to be king. On a surface level the story is good, but once you get deep into the multiple chapters and the sub-narrative thrown at humans, is where this gets better and better. While several parts can be predictable, at the end I will say that this game doesn't want to keep everything as a hidden surprise. It gives the player details of what is going to happen every now and then. In any case, there are some twists and points where it simply hooked me a lot, and I just wanted to know what happens in the end, because this story has powerful messages. Particularly every time you see that MC's book. Its gameplay could be divided in multiple parts, having to manage your party members because that way they get newer tricks, prepare every voyage, as they consume several days, plus the whole exploration, where things might go sour as there are some effects that you need to consider at some points. In other words, the game wants you to struggle a bit, and then it comes to fights, where they took the classic SMT pressure system and added a slight twist, where some enemies have no weaknesses as defined as in SMT or Persona, so you have to inflict some weaknesses here and there, plus manage some puzzle fights, where you cannot really brute force your way because of the nature of the encounters. This one is definitely recommended, punishing at times but a lot of fun. And in the first place, Etrian Odyssey 3, with 160 hours. This is considering that you do most subquests, search almost everything, and plan to suffer like a masochist against a boss that grinds gears really good. Otherwise it takes like 50-60 hours the main story. Here a group of adventurers reach Armor Road. The objective? Riches? Fame? Glory? Only you know that. Now there is a kind of formula that is used in Etrian Odyssey games. I have explained it in other videos, so leaving some of those details aside, let's say that if you want to get the whole idea, going through the game and subquest is pretty much mandatory. There are interesting pieces of lore left and right. Now in this game, I would particularly say that you need to take special care with how you synergize characters, as some classes have quite powerful moves with low accuracy, while others have random accuracy buffs, and things like that. This is the most critical thing, but don't worry that much. Retiring characters after some point is a good idea to get better bonuses and more chances to deal with the post content. Other tactic is prepare multiple groups and farm materials like a madman. That way, the struggle in the long run isn't as messed up as if you just advance with one team. There are no rules here, but you may take some time to really understand how to break some parts of the game. It is worth mentioning that there are 3 routes. I didn't want to use a guide, but later I read it was a bit messy. In any case, that is how you unlock some things later. And that's pretty much about it, because this game is all about the patience and thread carefully step by step, at least considering you want to tackle the post content. With this, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.